Hello, Patreons, and welcome back to the Spotlight. This is when we take the occasion to meet creators and other folks in the pop culture space. And tonight I am very excited to be joined by Kelli Fitzpatrick, the tagline on her website, author, teacher, and geek. I love it. Very, very good. Kelli, good evening. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Very good. I always like to start things off in, I will admit, the most obvious of places. How did you get to be a fan of all of this? How did you get to be in the geek life?
Yeah, exposure from my parents. So, particularly my father is a major fan of science fiction and Star Trek in particular. And so I grew up watching, Voyager and Deep Space Nine during their original run. And we also had like a lot of science fiction literature in my house. So I distinctly remember my dad giving me his college literature book and finding the ones who walk away from Omelas, and I was in like middle school. Like,
Oh my
oh, like,
goodness. Yeah.
oh, this is
Yeah.
cool. Like, what is this? And my mom very much encouraged reading and took us to the library all the time. And so I think I really enjoyed getting to see the imaginative possibility of science fiction, the way it envisioned other worlds. I read a lot of Ursula K. Le Guin and Robert Heinlein and Ray Bradbury, and just kind of fell in love with the speculative life.
That's awesome. Good deal. So this was your childhood, and from that you went off to college, as many of us did, and you had mentioned that you're originally from Michigan, which is where I am. I live in West Michigan. Where are you from in Michigan?
I am from a little town called Beaverton that is right in the
Beaverton.
middle. Do you know where it is? That's
I know.
awesome.
The thing is, I work in outside sales, so
Oh,
traveling the state of Michigan is something I've done for my entire career. So I often joke that when I hang up my shingle, there won't be a one horse town in this state that I haven't been through. So, especially since we just took a vacation to the UP, so lot more not even one horse towns up there.
oh, I love the UP. It's so beautiful. I miss it a
Yeah.
lot.
No, it was totally awesome. Well, so you love the science fiction, go off to college, and then you're off to the world. So let me jump forward, and then we'll kind of walk our way back. So you had your recent publication is Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers Declassified, and it's kind of funny because that character has become very synonymous, at least in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and very differently from where the character launched back in the late 1970s, early 80s, where it wasn't quite this as being part of that cosmic Marvel piece, Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor to a certain extent, where it's the space fantasy, science fantasy. So looking at that component of it, and then I assume, I've not read the book, I will admit, but I've skimmed a little information about it. How do you compare big screen Captain Marvel to Carol Danvers of the 1982 when she or 1980s when she made her mark?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of similarities and some very interesting deviations, which I think is cool because film is a different medium, and so it plays
Right.
differently. But I would say like Carol in the comics is very snarky and sarcastic. She's very gritty and resilient. I think I would say she goes through multiple identity crises, has to reinvent herself several times. She joins teams and leaves them. And I don't know. This woman has tenacity like no one else, but also is just incredibly competent across a range of fields. So a lot of people know that she's a soldier, right? But she was in the Air Force. But in the comics, she's also a magazine editor. She's a
Right.
security chief at NASA. She has a bunch of other, I think, professional credentials that make her a really well-rounded, fascinating individual who's kind of at this nexus of like communication and safety and things. So I see that as an interesting through line in the comics.
Hmm.
And then, I think a lot of that got translated to the screen. I think the way that Brie Larson portrays her is true to the heart of Carol Danvers. Like we do get that tenacity and grit, that's still there. There's maybe a level of reservedness that I saw in the actor's portrayal that I deeply respect, that I think maybe isn't quite reflected in the comics, but I think it's cool. I view the comics, or I'm sorry, I view the MCU as, it's an adaptation. You're taking original source material and adapting it to a different
Right.
medium. It's better to look at it as inspired by rather than a one to one. Um,
Right.
but I do think the movies very much captured that cosmic aspect, like the scope and the scale and the distance and the magnitude that really just surrounds all of Carol's stories. She's one of the most powerful heroes in the universe, um, and
Absolutely.
and so that part, I mean, I think they absolutely nailed.
Yeah. Well, how did you get turned on to the character in the first place? When did you discover Captain Marvel? Well, she was binary, and then she was the Captain America again, and then the thing with Rogue, and like when did you discover the character?
Yeah, so my first encounter with Marvel was the very early MCU movies, and
Oh,
so
okay,
that
okay.
sort of so I was movies first, and then backed up into the comics, and
I
so
love it.
Tony Stark was the first person, and so that leads into Iron Man, and then Carol has a whole lot of history with Iron Man, and my favorite aspect of her is her binary, when
Hmm.
when she's binary, and so that was an early thing that I found that I was like, wow, she's got the power of a star. That's really incredible. Um, I think one of the first things I read of hers in the comics was Kelly Sue DeConnick's
Oh yeah.
2012
Oh, such a great
run,
run.
when she becomes Captain Marvel, when she takes that mantle, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really, really
Yeah.
powerful." So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's there's so much content. I mean, she appeared as a character first in 1968,
Oh,
and
that's
then
right. It does go back that far. Yeah.
yeah, because she was a side character in the Marvel, the original Captain Marvel series,
Right. He's
and
right over my shoulder. Can you see him on the back shelf?
yeah,
He's there.
yeah,
He's
that's
next to the
awesome.
the Lego Infinity Gauntlet that my wife built that I have the middle finger sticking up.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, I started with the newer stuff and then kind of ended up backtracking into some of the older stuff, which was
Yeah.
such a treat, to go explore.
What's your and now I'm just kind of spinning off of what's your preference in the world of reading digital comics versus the local comic shop? I'm curious. There's no wrong answer. You know that.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, support your local comic shop. But I think, for somebody like me who was writing in the Marvel universe, like they gave me access to Marvel Unlimited, so I just had all of it.
Such a big
So
fan.
yeah,
Since it was new, it's been around since 2012, 2013. I've had it that long.
yeah,
And use it. I won't say every day. I go in fits and spurts, with
mhm,
comics, but I'll come back. And it was funny on our Discord today. I was talking to people after seeing the Fantastic Four last night. I'm like, I've read every issue of Amazing Spider-Man and I tried to get through the Avengers, but there were some real bad patches. I said, should I try out the Fantastic Four? It's 416 issues in the first volume. And I took a poll, and I'm letting the poll ride for a couple weeks, and I'll abide by the decision of the. But I started reading issue 2 today, so I'm trying to get a head start. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I grew up going to a local comic shop. There's several here in the Grand Rapids area where I live, but digital is. I support those shops myself by buying things that are non-comic. I figures, collectibles, things of that nature. So
Yeah,
obviously, as you can see, looking around me,
I purchased like the omnibus. Like I like having like here's the entire 2012 run
right?
in a book.
If you can hold it. Yeah. I've
Yeah,
tried that. I'm like, oh,
exactly.
yeah. Oh my, it's tough stuff. So, all right. Well, moving along, back into my other big love, something you love very much, which is Star Trek. So you were one of the lucky people who had a story published when they were doing Strange New Worlds. And I, I feel like if they still do it, I'm not aware of it, but I don't feel like they did it for very long.
They did it for 10 years in the
Okay, that's a long time.
90s.
In
Yep,
the
in the
in
90s.
the distant when I was young, when I was in college, yes, absolutely.
Yes, and then
Um,
they discontinued it, and then they
okay,
revived it just for 1 year in 2016 for the
and that
50th
was you.
anniversary, and that's
Okay.
the one that I got into. So,
Wow. It's kind of put your feet in the wet clay of something. Then they said, yoink, not doing it
yep,
anymore.
they
Um,
did. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to express your love for Star Trek. Give me the Reader's Digest of your story. I've not read it. I apologize. Give me the Reader's Digest version of the story that you wrote. It was a short story.
It's a short story, yes, and it is the next generation. And I wanted to like fill out a little corner of Star Trek where it felt like maybe there was definitely more story there, but we didn't get to see it. And one of the parts that I always felt that way about was toward the end of the next generation, in the seventh season. Um, I'll try not to spoil everything. All this has been out for a very long time. Um, uh,
32 years, yes.
yeah, exactly. So Dr. Beverly Crusher has to say goodbye to her son Wesley because he's gonna
Right.
go off with the Traveler and travel the universe, and she says goodbye, and then, like, we don't get to see any of her processing that on screen. And so
Okay.
I wanted to write a story where Beverly has to process what just happened. What am I going to see my son again? How do I feel about this? Because it was a rather sudden thing. And so I wrote a story in which the story starts with her packing up Wesley's things because he didn't take anything with him. He
He didn't
just,
take his little valise that he brought from the academy, his little
yeah,
travel
like,
case.
no, she's putting his little ugly sweater in the box, and trying to
Oh,
think about this. And
sad.
then and then there's a medical crisis on a planet that
Of
they're
course.
trying to deal with, and so she has to go down and try to help out with this. And there's some. I'm really fascinated by just sunlight. I like studying stars and things, and so
Right.
there's some cool stuff going on with sunlight on the planet. And she's solving that while processing,
Oh my gosh, this is a
grief.
great story.
Yeah.
I've met Gates on a couple of different occasions. My wife and I do the Star Trek cruise. And I go to cons just like everybody else does. That's a story. I'm always wondering if and it varies by the actor, if they're ever aware of stories like this or something like that. That's something that she should know about. Maybe she does, but I tell you what, if I bump into her again, I'll mention that we had this conversation. That sounds like an
Awesome.
amazing story that I will have to check out. So, or it's funny because the question I had wrote down contained nothing about that, but my kind of button to that is that what is your dream Trek screenwriting project? Like if you would be like, we're hiring you, Kelly, and we need, or we're going to buy your spec script like they did back in the old days for blank. If you could turn the time back and let's say it's any show, you're traveling in time and you're like, you put that down in front of Ron Moore and the writing staff and say, boom, write this for me or produce this for me.
Oh gosh. Okay. I think one of the ones that I would want to write is so I some of my favorite Voyager episodes were around the Doctor and
Yeah.
his rights as a person.
Oh, yes,
It's
several great episodes about that. Yeah.
Yes, author is one of them, but there's some other times when like should he get to make decisions? And there's an episode and now I can't remember the name of it, but we find out that like all the earlier versions of his program are being used for like menial labor, elsewhere.
That's in author. That is
Oh,
because
is that author? Okay.
yeah, but because that's what's happening back in the Alpha Quadrant, and they have that the kind of the button of the episode where
Yeah.
it's a mining, and then they're walking around, and one copy says to another, he says, he hands him a rock or something. He says, check that. There's a tab in here. Check this. Watch it after hours. And it's the Doctor's story about
Yep.
the voyeur, the one that he sued to make sure it didn't get published until it was ready. Yeah, I know
Yep.
it. That's a great
So
episode.
so I want to write the story of that workers revolution essentially, like interspersed with the news stories that these folks are telling inspired by our doctor. Like I think that would be really fun.
That's awesome. Well, I tell you what, in on our show, Peter, who's been my partner 5 years, we do a Star Trek show where for the Legacy series, and we're actually getting very close to the end. We take blocks of episodes and we talk about them a little bit. And we'll talk about like 6 or 7 at a time, and we'll split a season into quarters. Season 7 of Voyager is coming up, and I got to tell you, if you have any interest, you would be more than welcome to come back for that block and talk about that
Oh, sure.
episode. So I'm going to float that out there, and when the time comes, we'll have a conversation about it. But anyway, yeah, that I like that idea. No, that's totally cool. All right, so you've done some work with NASA, and you're a teacher. Man, I mean, how did where'd you go to school? Where'd you do your undergrad? Are you in Michigan?
Yes, in Michigan at Saginaw Valley State University.
Oh,
That's where I did
SVSU.
my SVSU. That's where I did my teaching degree. They have an excellent college of education. And so then with that degree, I taught high school English and journalism in Michigan for 8 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
absolutely loved it. It's one of the most fulfilling things I think you can do as a career, because you know that no matter what happens, like, you are making a difference in the lives of young people,
Very true. Very
and that
true.
can never
Yeah.
be undone. I
Yeah.
started a creative writing club there that was like so fun. I was in charge of the yearbook and stuff, so that was excellent. And then my Star Trek story got published, and then I started my writing career, kind of started taking off. And that was exciting. But I realized that I needed more time to dedicate to writing if I was going to kind of go to the next level, and particularly to be able to make the jump to novels,
Yeah.
because they're just kind of a different beast. And So I decided to apply to creative writing master's degrees, to do an MFA. And so then I came to Iowa State to do that, and got that degree in 2024, and got the Marvel contract right in the middle of that degree. And so
Wow.
I was writing a novel for my master's thesis, an original sci-fi novel, at the same time that I was writing a book for Marvel, which had
That's so
about a
crazy.
6-month turnaround for both. So like
Oh my
it was
goodness.
it was intense. And then earlier in my degree, I had we were the degree at Iowa State is a creative. It's in creative writing and environment. So I think it's the only environmentally themed creative writing program, MFA. And so as part of that, you get to arrange your own fieldwork experience, and get to do an internship. And so I asked them, like, as a sci-fi writer, outer space is kind of my environment. Like, could I do something, in science writing? And they said, sure, like, that's fine. And so I was able to do a science writing internship with NASA for the Hubble Space Telescope
That's so
outreach
crazy.
team. Yeah,
That's
it
so
was super fun.
wild. Oh my God, you have had just a whirlwind of a career. It's absolutely incredible. This is absolutely wild. Well, couple of things to wrap up. What's on your radar right now? We're having a crazy summer for movies. We're having a crazy month for movies. We kicked off July. We're recording July of 2025 with Superman. Fantastic Four is out this weekend. We're at the end of July. Um, what are you reading right now in the comics world? What are you reading right now? What's exciting you right now? What's on the horizon that's kind of got your radar going?
Yeah, so I'm working on another very large tie-in project, so I've had
Okay.
to shift my focus to that. So I am reading some things, but it's mostly research for that project, which I can't tell you what it is.
That's totally fine. And when the
um,
time comes, and hopefully maybe if you're
yeah,
continuing to work with us, you'll get to talk all about it. That'd be awesome.
exactly. Yes. But I like to always be like listening to an audiobook, and right now I've been listening to a lot of climate fiction, and so right now I'm listening to 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson, which is a pretty cool space sci-fi story. So we'll see how that ends up being, but I like his writing in general.
Gotcha. Very good. Are you following any comics right now that are maybe not necessarily peripheral to what you're working on, but like what's caught your attention? What did you think about those two movies I mentioned? I assume you've seen them or you're going to.
I have not. So I've been on the convention circuit. I know.
Of
Like
course.
so I've been at Origins Game Fair and Shore Leave, and I'm going to Gen Con in a few days, and then
Oh,
Worldcon
gotcha.
after that. So I am
Wow.
hoping that before the summer is out, I get to catch up on all of these films. But I've
And
heard
stuff. Yeah.
amazing things about all of them.
I mean, and again, I invite you to listen to our main podcast because we cover Secret Friends Unite, which is our main show. We've been making it for over 10 years now. It's me and my college roommate from Michigan State, Todd. We
Cool.
cover big stuff, and then we have three shows where we cover little stuff. So he's got a gaming podcast, and I run two podcasts. One's a Star Wars and one's a Star Trek. So we're immersed in everything. But yeah, I encourage you to listen. But
Cool.
when you have the time, when would you possibly have the time? Because
I
look how
know.
busy you are.
This is the problem with being like having a, full-time job as a teacher, and then
Yeah.
also because now I work at a university, so
Oh,
I'm
very good.
doing that stuff on top of tie and writing, but it's awesome. I love it. It's
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. Yes, I want to stay in touch because I would love to have you as one of our regular guests. You know, we have people on from time to time. It doesn't have to necessarily be for a big thing, but it could just be like, hey, we're talking about this block of episodes of Voyager, and I know that would be a touch for you, so I'd reach out. But where do people engage with you online? Where do people find you?
Yeah, so my website is kellifitzpatrick.com, Kelly with an I, and I am most active on Blue Sky currently for social media.
Yep.
And I also have a Facebook author page that's public that folks can follow me there, and I have updates on projects I'm doing. I also have a newsletter that you can sign up for through my website.
Very cool. Well, this has been awesome. Kelly, thank you so much. I look forward to reconnecting with you to talk about Star Trek in the future, but I really appreciate you making the time. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Charlie.
All right. All right. And Patreons, thanks for listening. If you're listening to this on our free feed, please visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite and get a free trial and listen to all of the great spotlight interviews and other content that we do. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.